Muse. It's I. Your artist, I guess you would call me. Would you call me that? Would you call me friend? You can call me friend. Whatever you want to call me. It's fabulous by me. Okay, so I have an interesting little topic to talk with you about today, Muse. I was discussing with someone, and that someone shall be remain nameless, the other day, about the current book that I'm writing. And the book that the work in progress, which is called working title of On the Lam. And I think that I finally come to the realization that this book is a romance. However, it's not a normal romance. It's not anywhere near a normal romance. There's no big sexy in it. There aren't abs in it. There's no penis. There's no boobs. Nothing like that. It's not that kind of romance. It's not the kind of romance that a middle-aged man or woman is going to find themselves wanting to masturbate with. So I was telling this person about this book. And this is kind of where the subject at hand comes from. And they then proceeded to tell me of a friend of theirs who is a writer and just received a rather lucrative contract with a publisher. And then they proceeded to backtrack a little and tell me how they wound up getting that lucrative offer. Well, it turns out that this writer decided at one point that they wanted to write romance, but not just normal romance, a niche romance. I'm not going to say what niche it is because I don't want to take a chance on anyone ever discovering who this person could be. And so this writer decided that they had never written a romance novel before, so they decided that there had to be an easy way to do it. They started doing a little research, and lo and behold, that writer discovered online a formula. A formula for romance novels. So the writer decided to use that formula and wrote a niche romance novel. And wrote another one. And wrote another one. Using that formula. And then the lucrative deal came about. Yeah, so I have to be really careful here because I'm not in the business of offending or insulting anyone. If you find a formula out there as a writer and you want to use it, more power to you. Use that formula and allow it to guide you in whatever way it does. I'm sorry, I can't help myself here. I'm only looking at this through my perspective and how I would feel if someone said to me, hey, here's a formula for a book, and I want you to follow it and write your own book with using this formula. I think my immediate response would be, go to hell. I would probably put it in kinder terms, of course. But I'm not going to follow a formula. I don't even follow my own formulas. I don't have a formula. I've never created a formula. Because to me, Muse, developing this formula is insulting to you. And it's insulting to the work that I produce. I mean, you know, we've all seen formulas in act. Formulae. We've all seen formulas in action. All you got to do is watch television. And any given show, you will find, eventually, after watching it enough, you'll find a formula. And so many shows follow these same formulas. So look at NCIS. NCIS developed a formula that spawned an inordinate number of NCIS shows. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about it. I've never actually watched an NCIS show. But they have a formula. It works because the average viewer, and again, I'm not insulting anybody, but the average viewer is okay with those formulas. And quite honestly, my guess is the average reader is okay with those formulas. Why? Because they're familiar. And most people are comfortable with the familiar. And it's when that you go outside of the familiar that readers and people become a little uncomfortable. But you see, I guess that's where I differ. Especially with certain genres like horror, I want readers to be uncomfortable. I want there to be a certain level of discomfort in what I write. If you can read Hell's Muse or any of the books in the Nameless Saga and be perfectly comfortable with what you've read, either something's wrong with you or something's wrong with me. Because I intentionally wrote those in such a way that would make people a little bit uncomfortable. And I didn't follow a formula. Now, part of just inherent in the way I write, it's not possible to have a formula. Because I don't even use an outline. I just dive in and start writing. And I actually depend upon an organic style of writing. And I've talked about this until I'm blue in the face, that my writing style is it's a very causal kind of style, that A causes B, causes C, causes D, causes F. That's how I write. I'll be writing a scene, I'll write a moment, and that moment will cause another moment, and that moment will cause another moment. And if I tried to use a formula, I think I would probably lose my mind, because I would feel like I would lose all organic, I would completely lose the organic nature of my writing, because all of a sudden I was hemmed in and had to follow this formulaic outline. And then I would have to call you my McMuse, and you are not my McMuse. I mean, that's formulas are prevalent in everything. Like I said McMuse. They're prevalent in the food industry. There's a here in the town in which I live, there are a number of Mexican restaurants. And if you go to those Mexican restaurants, none of them have the same name. Well, unless it's not a franchise, but unless they have different locations. But these different Mexican restaurants have different names, but they all have the same menu. Because what happens is there was one at one point that created this menu, and it was wildly popular. And these other restaurants decided, hey, let's just use this formula because it works. And they might call something a different name, but it's the same thing. And those restaurants are popular. They're always popular, always packed. And then you have other Mexican restaurants that don't follow that formula. And you go to those restaurants and they're not always packed. And that's not to say that their food isn't good, because their food is good. There are tons of restaurants in this town, and the ones that I visit are delicious. None of them follow the formula of anybody else's food. So there is value to be found in either style. So I guess what I'm saying in the end, that you're not damned if you do or damned if you don't. If you are a writer and you need to follow a formula to successfully complete a book, then do so. And you could get on your computer and Google romance novel formula. horror novel formula. You can find a formula for anything you want to write. And because many of those, some of those formulas have proved themselves. They are proven to work. If you follow that formula, chances are you're going to write a novel that, if you already have the skills to write a novel, you're going to write something that works. But for me, ain't going to happen. Simply not going to happen. Because the guilt that I would feel from using a formula, I would really honestly just feel like I was regurgitating a story that someone else had already told. Just be doing it through my voice with different character names. I can't do that. I refuse to call you my McMuse. You are original. You certainly are. And I like to think that I'm original as well. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying that if a scholar, maybe posthumously, some scholar is going to read through all of my work, or maybe they're going to input it into a computer and an algorithm is going to do this, but maybe they will find that I subliminally did use a formula, that I didn't even know that I was using a formula. There's going to be this massive breakthrough in the canon of my work, and they're going to say, we finally cracked the code. Here is his formula that he used to write his novels. And my ghost will come up and say, hey, let me see what it was, because I certainly didn't know. Probably never happened, but I would like to think that at some point a scholar is going to comb through my work, but who knows? I have had kids write book reports about my books, some of my books. It's funny to read those things. They're wonderful. They're heartwarming, and the best part about it is how cool the parents are that allow their kids to read my books. And it's like, and I think that the last one I heard about was from the zombie series, which is fine. It's the second I hear of an elementary school's parents that allowed them to do a book report on Hell's Muse, I might have to question the parenting styles of those people. But hey, more power to you. I'm not condemning or pointing a finger of blame. You do you. And I think ultimately that boils down to the kernel of this issue for me is you do you. I do me. You don't do someone else. Just because there's a formula out there, just because there's a way to make this easy doesn't mean you should take it. If it's worth writing, it's worth writing the right way, and it's worth having to suffer through all of the struggles and challenges of creating a novel. It's not easy. At least not at first. After a while, after you've written 20 or so books, you develop the skills. You develop the craft enough that you can write a book fairly effortlessly. And then, of course, you have to go through edits, which is not effortless. And then you proofread it, and then all of a sudden you're really challenged. But don't take the easy way out. Even if you think, even if you are absolutely convinced that by taking the easy route that you were going to be gifted with that lucrative contract like that other person did. First and foremost, I've never read the books that person wrote, so I don't. They may have had massively talented skills to begin with. And using that formula was more of an assurance for them. Because let's face it, the romance readers, and I know this, and I know going into this, that they expect certain things in their books. And they're not going to get those things from this book that I'm writing. So it may bomb spectacularly, at least with that one particular audience. But I think anybody looking for a romance novel of a different sort might enjoy this one, because these are tragically flawed characters in a tragically flawed situation. Will there be a happily ever after? I don't know. I'm not a fan of writing those. Maybe there will be. But there certainly is not a formula. But hey, to each his own, or each her own. If you need a formula, find one. But if you do opt to go that route, make sure that formula has been vetted. Make sure it is viable. And that after you have read through this formula, if you don't find yourself choking back a mouthful of your own bile, then use it. Just while you're writing a book using a formula, don't refuse to allow there to be a certain level of organic writing in the process. Because if you shove that aside, then your book is going to suffer. And the originality, there's just not going to be any. If you're following a formula, if you allow for a certain level of organic writing in the process, then you'll have something original. And that's what it's all about. You got to strive for originality. You do you. And don't depend upon a McMuse. But hey, back away from my muse. Because that muse is mine. And that muse is awesome.